Good morning, everyone. We're ready to get started. I'm going to make some introductory remarks. I'm going to ask Speaker Turzai to speak right away, but we have many of my colleagues that are here, and I want to acknowledge their presence because some of them have other meetings they need to get to, and I want to acknowledge them while they're here. I want to thank Representative Mary Jo Daley for being here, Representative Madeline Dean, who just joined us, Representative Kathy Rapp, Representative Eric Rowe, Representative Matthew Baker, Representative Isabella Fitzgerald, Representative Jean DiGirolamo, Representative Brian Ellis, and Representative Dan Miller. According to the World Health Organization, an estimated 140 million women and children worldwide have been affected by female genital cutting, or what is more commonly known as female genital mutilation. According to the AHA Foundation, more than 500,000 women are at risk for this barbaric procedure. That's 500,000. More than 166,000 of these women are under the age of 18. In Pennsylvania, more than 19,000 women are at risk of this procedure. 6,000 of them are under the age of 18. Female genital mutilation is a ghastly practice that involves the partial or total removal of the external female genitalia for non-medical reasons. It's recognized internationally as a violation of the human rights of girls and women, and it reflects deep-rooted inequality between the sexes and constitutes an extreme form of discrimination against women. Female genital mutilation is almost always carried out on minors and is a violation of the rights of children. The practice also violates a person's right to health, security, and physical integrity, the right to be free from torture and cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment, and the right to life when the procedure results in death. Female genital mutilation has no health benefits, and it harms girls and women in many ways. It involves removing and damaging healthy and normal female genital tissue and interferes with the natural function of girls and women's bodies. Immediate complications can include severe pain, shock, hemorrhage, and bacterial infection. And yet the House has taken no action on my legislation, House Bill 413, which would make female genital mutilation a crime in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. If signed into law, we would join 26 other states which have specific laws against this practice. Since the process is not considered a state crime in Pennsylvania, there are no official state records for how many young girls in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who have undergone this horrifying procedure. In 2008, the World Health Assembly passed a resolution on the elimination of this practice, emphasizing the need for concerted action from healthcare providers and law enforcement to stop this practice. And this is why it is so important that the House of Representatives moves House Bill 413 as quickly as possible. This legislation would specifically make it a crime to cut or allow someone to circumcise or excise the genitals of a female minor. Under my bill, female genital mutilation would be a felony of the first degree. For many years, the United States Department of State considers female mutilation not only a public health concern, but a human rights concern, as the practice violates the right to a woman's bodily integrity. Women who are immigrants are at continued risk of the practice as these cultural beliefs follow them to the United States. But we cannot stop this unless my legislation is passed into law. I want to thank Speaker Mike Turzai for being here and for his support of this legislation. I would ask him to give remarks at this time. Speaker Turzai.
Thank you, Representative Murt. Thank you, sir. And thank to all my colleagues who are present here today in support of House Bill 413. As you can notice, the significant bipartisan support that Representative Murt has lined up with respect to this important legislation. I'm so honored, Tom, to be a part of today's press conference. You have put an amazing amount of time in educating me and our colleagues about this issue of female genital mutilation. He's been so passionate about drawing attention to this horrific practice because he's a caring person, a caring legislator, and someone who actually wants to make a positive difference. Many of us would have just thought that this barbaric practice occurred in a foreign country. To be honest with you, I did not realize that it was occurring in Pennsylvania. I was not even really aware of the practice until Representative Murt educated us. The fact of the matter is, this horrendous practice is occurring in Pennsylvania. And I'm honored today to stand up here with Representative Murt and those who have been victims and my colleagues and say, no, this practice cannot continue. It is not an okay practice. It should not be happening in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or anywhere for that matter. I have heard these statistics. 19,000 women have been undergoing female genital mutilation, with 6,000 under the age of 18 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This has to stop. I am fully supportive of House Bill 413, which would prohibit this gruesome practice by making it a felony. I support it. I want to help move it through the process, get it through the House, and on to the governor's desk. Tom, thank you for including me. To all of our colleagues, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker Turzai. Another colleague that needs to speak because she's getting to another meeting is Representative Madeline Dean, my friend and my colleague from Montgomery County. Representative Dean.
Good morning. My name's Madeline Dean. I represent the neighboring district, 153rd, Abington and Upper Dublin. I'm pleased to be here with Representative Murt and Representative Bullock as they have introduced this important legislation. I want to thank my colleagues for introducing this humanitarian legislation. Some of the estimates I've seen are that as many as 200 million women and girls worldwide have been subject to female genital mutilation, or FGM. I was aware of this cruel practice designed to control women, and I knew it was a problem in some nations. But like Speaker Turzai, I was not aware that it was a problem in our own country and in our own state. It wasn't until Representative Murt first introduced this legislation in 2013 that I learned that over 200,000 women and girls in the U.S. have been subject to this atrocious, ghastly procedure. FGM is already outlawed by federal statute, but to date, there has been only one prosecution. And despite decreases worldwide, it is believed that the practice is on the rise here in the U.S. And perhaps that is because of the lack of enforcement and the lack of awareness, just like Speaker Turzai spoke about. So to end this horrendous practice, it must be brought out from the shadows. I thank all of you for being here today to help us achieve exactly that. Bring this ghastly tradition or this practice out of the shadows. I look forward to working with Donna Bullock, my colleague, and Rep. Murt, my colleague, in the House to end this form of torture and subjugation that has no place in society. And again, I thank them for bringing this legislation forward.
Thank you, Representative Dean. Before I introduce our next speaker, George LaRubin, I want to recognize the co-prime sponsor of this legislation is with us, and that is my friend and my colleague, Donna Bullock from Philadelphia. Thank you for being here, Representative Bullock. Our next speaker is George LaRubin from the AHA Foundation. He's the executive director, he's an attorney, and he's done a great deal of work on this issue and some related issues. So I would ask him to give remarks at this time. George.
Thank you. Good morning. Representative Murt, thank you for creating this opportunity to discuss a very important human rights abuse, female genital mutilation, FGM. The founder of my organization, the AHA Foundation, is a survivor of FGM. As a 5-year-old girl growing up in Somalia, Ayaan Hirsi Ali was held down by her grandmother, and her genitals were cut off with scissors. She was then sewn up and her legs tied together to make her genitals heal over. When Ayaan came to the United States, she saw that FGM was happening here. So 10 years ago, Ayaan founded the AHA Foundation to shed light on these abuses against girls. FGM is a form of gender-based violence that the State Department and international bodies recognize as a violation of girls' and women's human rights. It is motivated by cultural beliefs about sexual behavior, femininity, and modesty. FGM is used to reduce a woman's libido in the hopes of safeguarding her virginity and fidelity in marriage. This practice is used as a way to control women. FGM is a harmful traditional practice. It takes place in multiple cultures, ethnicities, and religions. FGM is defined by the World Health Organization as the partial or the total removal of the female external genitalia for non-medical reasons. FGM is usually inflicted on girls between the ages of 4 and 10 years old. FGM has no health benefits. Let me repeat that. It has no health benefits, and it results in lifelong physical and psychological consequences. A report by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention estimated that there are 513,000 women and girls at risk in the United States who have undergone FGM. In Pennsylvania, there is an estimate of 19,480 women and girls at risk. The Philadelphia metropolitan region is 8th highest in the country. Right here where we're standing in the Harrisburg-Carlisle metro area, there are 2,111 women and girls at risk. While the federal government has banned the practice, there are major gaps in the legislation that make it difficult to prevent and prosecute FGM at the state level. The AHA Foundation works with police, doctors, teachers, community leaders to prevent FGM. And we hear from them that state laws would help them protect the girls from FGM. State legislation can be used to fill the gaps and enable state prosecutors to take action against FGM. Now, some people say that aggravated assault laws cover FGM. Unfortunately, there's an issue with intent. Parents wrongly believe that they're doing the best for their children by inflicting FGM. The parent's intent is seldom malicious, and intent is a requirement to prosecute assault. Unfortunately, parents and guardians can also consent to practices that violate their daughter's human rights. A statute in Pennsylvania outlawing FGM must exclude parental consent to this barbaric practice. In addition, legislation in Pennsylvania would give prosecutors the ability to prosecute at the state level and not require understaffed federal law enforcement and the U.S. Department of Justice to get involved. A state statute would give teachers, doctors, police, and social services the tools to fight FGM in their jurisdictions. In the AHA Foundation's work with girls at risk, we hear that having laws that criminalize FGM, like the legislation that Representative Murt has put forward, gives families a compelling excuse not to cut their little girls when there's community cultural pressure to do so. 26 states have criminalized FGM. But as it stands, Pennsylvania is still on the wrong side of history with regard to FGM. The AHA Foundation supports Representative Murt and encourages Pennsylvania legislators to support the passage of HB 413, criminalizing FGM. Thank you.
Thank you, George. We thought that this event would be more powerful if we were able to hear some remarks from a victim of female genital mutilation. And I have met F.A. Cole in the past. We appeared on a panel at Drexel University in Philadelphia that discussed female genital mutilation, and her testimony at that time was very powerful. And we've asked her to join us today. F.A. Cole is originally from the West African country of Sierra Leone. She is a victim of female genital mutilation. She has written a book which is called Distant Sunrise: The Strength in her pain to forgive. And F.A. Cole lives in Maryland, and she's a full-time employee for the federal government. She works in the U.S. Patent Office. And I would ask F.A. Cole to please come forward at this time.
Good morning. Thank you, Representative Murt, and I also want to thank the AHA Foundation for having me here today. As Representative Murt just said, I'm originally from Sierra Leone, West Africa, and that's located on the west coast of Africa. At age 11, under the supervision of my stepmom, who instigated the whole thing, my sister and I were led to this place. These places are usually secluded. Sometimes if it's in the provinces, it happens in the bushes, but in our case, it was in the city of Freetown. And that night, August 1st, 1984, my clitoris was forcefully amputated. Keep in mind that FGM is not a religious thing. When people hear female genital mutilation, they conclude that it's a Muslim thing. I was born and raised Catholic. I'm a Christian. My father was a devout Catholic. So why did we have to go through it? I have no idea. But I heard that it's a way to control the girl's, woman's sexuality. In most cases, though, when women undergo female genital mutilation, it actually does the opposite. It makes you become promiscuous because you're looking for someone to love you. Because you do not enjoy sex, you go from one man to the other, thinking that maybe something is wrong with them, not knowing that it's because of what happened when your clitoris was forcefully amputated. So that night I was gagged. Well, I was blindfolded, my hands were tied behind my back, I was stripped naked, and I was laid to lay on I call it the bed of death. Well, they put me on the floor. I was 11, and a woman who was about 3 or 4 times my size, who was also naked, sat on top of my chest. And she was handed the weapon of death, that's what I call it. So I lay there. I don't know how many women pinned me down, and they spread my legs wide open. And she proceeded to cut my clitoris. I can't tell if the razor blade that was used on my sister was the same razor blade that was used on me, but I'm sure it was. I screamed, I fought, and when they realized that they couldn't contain my screams, I was then gagged to stop me from screaming. And then after that, after the torture that would last a lifetime, they jubilated, you know, they sang, they danced, they drank alcohol, because that's what they do. 33 years later, I'm 44, 33 years later, I still battle with the psychological effect of female genital mutilation. It's not something that you get over. It does not matter how many counseling sessions that you have, you still battle with it. Sexually, you battle with that. You're damaged sexually, physically, emotionally. You know, you look at yourself and you think something is wrong with you. I didn't even know what the clitoris was. I'm just now beginning to learn because, hey, guess what? On September 21st, in California, I had clitorial reconstruction surgery. So I just got a new toy. You know, that's what I call my hoo-ha. So I'm now at 44, learning the clitoris, the function of the clitoris. And I'm actually loving it because I'm experiencing some strange sensations I never had. It's a bit weird because it's something I didn't have. So now I've been reacquainted, reunited with my clitoris, and I love the feeling. But still, the psychological effect, you know, the damage had been done, you know. What about the other millions of women out there who may not have the opportunity to undergo the surgery? What's going to happen to them? And female genital mutilation, like you heard, serves no medical purpose. It's just a way of torture. And you also know the sad part is it's not done for free. Your parents actually pay for these women to amputate your clitoris. You know, and then they let us know that, oh, once you go through it, or when you come out, you get lots of presents. And that's what they used to trick the girls into going through, because what kid doesn't like gifts? So you go through it and they never tell you the impact that has on you. So I hope that in Philadelphia, like you've been hearing, that you can actually come together, work together to make sure that the girls are protected. You don't have to worry about the girls who are not born on American soil. I've heard people say, oh, it's a culture thing, it's a traditional thing, so we don't have to do anything about it. But think about the girls who were born on on American soil. These are Americans. Forget about their parents. You have to protect these girls so that they would not grow up to be beta like I was. For 33 years, I was beta. And then I found out during my pre-op operation that I thought it was type 1 that was done to me. And type 1 is when they amputate the clitoris. That's what I thought. But I found out actually that it was type 2. They not only amputated my clitoris, they did a number on my labia majora. And so that also got me really, really angry. There are 3 types of FGM. Type 1 is the amputation of the clitoris. Type 2, they amputate the clitoris, and then they remove parts of the labia, all of it. And then part 3 is when they're type 3, is when they remove everything, and then they stitch up the women. So once they stitch you up, they leave just a tiny hole for you to pee. And when it's time for you to get married, you have to go see a doctor to remove the stitches. So for them, they go through the pain twice, you know, and I think that this has to stop. Let's put aside our differences and say, oh, it's a culture thing, so we don't have to do anything. Just think about it. If you're a girl or if you're a man and you have... If you're castrated, how would that make you feel, you know? And I'm saying you lay there and they take a knife or a razor blade or scissors and just amputate everything. How would that make you feel? And that's what we feel. That's how we feel. That's what we have to live with for the rest of our lives. I stand here today to talk, and I'm even surprised that I'm not crying. But I usually cry. It's not something I plan, but I just hope that we can all work together to protect the girl child. Don't worry about those in practicing countries. We'll take care of them, but just protect the girl child who were born on American soil. Thank you.
Thank you, FA, for those remarks. If anyone wants to speak to FA after today's press event, she will be happy to answer any questions. I also would like to ask my colleague, Mary Jo Daly from Montgomery County, to please come forward.
That was an amazing story that we just heard, and really difficult to listen to. And I just, FA was just amazing in the hope and the relief that she's gotten from this long time damage. And I have prepared remarks, but I just am hoping that a lot of our colleagues will actually either read about this practice and have an opportunity to speak with FA, or even take a look at her book, because I just feel like hearing from her made me cringe in thinking of an 11-year-old child going through something like this. And it really is torture, and it really is an unbelievable way to control women. And I think that, quite honestly, a lot of us have had just about enough of controlling women, and this particular practice, we really need to get rid of it. So I'm not going to read my prepared remarks. I'm just so grateful that Representative Murt and Representative Bullock brought this bill forward, and we have an opportunity to come to something, to come to this press conference and hear someone who has actually suffered, and how beautifully she spoke. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Daly. My colleague, Gene DiGirolamo from Bucks County, has to go to another meeting, so I'm going to ask him to speak right away. Gene is the chairman of the Human Services Committee, someone with whom I've worked very closely. Representative DiGirolamo.
Thank you, Tom, and I just want to say thank you to the young lady for being here today and for your courage to tell us your story. It's just very powerful and very compelling. And just very quickly, this procedure is barbaric. This procedure is inhuman. I wish we were standing up here today and we were making it a felony and a crime to commit this procedure in the whole world. But we can't do that. But we can make it a felony and a crime here in Pennsylvania. It is absolutely appalling and heartbreaking to think that somebody would perform this procedure here in our state of Pennsylvania. And I want to commend Representative Murt and Representative Bullock, the both of them, for being relentless, not only this session, but the previous session, in trying to get this bill up for a vote. And I applaud Speaker Turzai, because I think what I heard him say today was he is committed to getting this bill up for a vote on the House floor. And I can't imagine that this would not pass unanimously in a bipartisan way if we get a vote. And I think I heard the speaker say that's going to happen. So let's get this done. It is the absolute right thing to do for our state. Thank you.
Our final speaker is one of the prime sponsors of this bill, my colleague Donna Bullock from Philadelphia. Before Representative Bullock gives her remarks, I just want to thank her for courageously and bravely standing with me when we were first talking about this legislation. I went to Representative Bullock and asked her if she would join me in a bipartisan way to promote this bill, to put this bill forward. And she stepped forward right away, and I'm very, very grateful for her doing that. Representative Bullock.
Thank you, Representative Murt. And let me also say thank you to FA. Your story was just inspiring to know that you have overcame this tragic event to have happened to you as a young child. But I'm also happy for you now to have the feeling of being a woman. Yeah. It's going to be fun. As a sponsor of House Bill 413, I am proud to work with Representative Murt to see that women in Pennsylvania are spared the pain and the humiliation cast upon them as a result of female genital mutilation. Our bill would prohibit the practice of FGM right here in the Commonwealth. On Saturday, I attended the Women's March on Philadelphia to reaffirm my commitment to do more for women and girls here in Pennsylvania, but particularly for those who are subjected to violence. And that includes workplace violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, and yes, even attacks on our reproductive organs. Let's face the truth. We are not doing enough to protect women and girls right here in Pennsylvania. More than 200 million women and girls today have been forced to endure this violence in over 30 countries across our world. And it's not just in those countries. In 2012, an estimated 513,000 women and girls in the U.S. were at risk of FGM or its consequences, and thousands of Pennsylvania women and girls right here in Pennsylvania as well, with many of them being sent actually back home to undergo this violating surgery, only to return back to this state in need of serious medical and mental health care. While federal law prohibits the performance of FGM and even makes it illegal for knowingly transporting a girl out of the country for the so-called vacation cuts, we need stronger enforcement here in Pennsylvania. So as FA mentioned, usually these surgeries are wrapped around gifts and wrapped around celebration. So even if we're not seeing the surgery happen here in Pennsylvania, it is happening and wrapped around a vacation to be sent back home to have the cuts performed. So we also need more resources for education, prevention, health care, and other supports for those women and girls undergoing these procedures, or for their families to help them push back on the pressures of culture and community to have the procedures done to their family members. We need to partner with culturally sensitive community organizations, faith-based institutions, and health providers to connect with those vulnerable and isolated communities. It is time for our Commonwealth to join the other 25 states in our country and prohibit FGM and protect our daughters, protect our sisters, our nieces, our neighbors, our friends. And refusing to do so will just make us complicit in the act itself. Once again, I'd like to thank Representative Murt, thank our speaker, and thank all of our colleagues who have joined us today and who have sponsored the bill. But more importantly, I want to thank women like F.A. for standing up, speaking up, and helping us shed light on this practice.
I don't think we have any more speakers, but we want to give the media an opportunity to ask questions if they want. Before we take questions, Madeline Dean, who was a former English professor at LaSalle University, probably described the practice best when she called it ghastly. And the descriptions and the remarks that you heard today might be a little bit calm compared to what the reality is relative to this violent, barbaric act against women across the world. And as Jean mentioned, Jean DiGirolamo, we're concerned about what we do here in Pennsylvania. And this is legislation that we need to move as quickly as possible. And I agree with what Representative DiGirolamo said, that we are confident this legislation will move quickly and efficiently and unanimously through the legislature. How about some questions? I would ask George Zarubin and F.A. Call and my colleague, Representative Bullock, to please come forward to help us with the questions, if you don't mind.
Can you just say what's prevented this from passage before?
Good question. The legislation is in the Judiciary Committee. That question is probably best answered by the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We have spoken, we have communicated with him and with his office, and I sent him a letter as recent as last week asking for their consideration of this bill. It has been suggested in the past that the aggravated assault statute in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is adequate to prosecute this crime, and that is simply not an accurate assessment. The aggravated assault statute requires a malicious intent, which does not exist here, and the aggravated assault statute also allows consent as a defense for a perpetrator. So as George Zarubin mentioned, I'll ask him maybe to expound on that, but that is the background of that bill. We believe that this would move quickly from committee if it were brought up by the chairman. George, do you have anything you want to add?
No,
okay.
You've said it.
Does that answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions this morning? As I mentioned, F.A. Call and George would be very happy to answer any questions from members of the media or anybody else who would like to talk to them about this. So we want to conclude now, but I will conclude with this thought. This is this is legislation that is good policy. This will protect young women in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania from this ghastly practice, this barbaric practice. And this is something that needs to move quickly and efficiently. This should not be an example of good policy not getting through the legislature. This is an example of good policy that would move through quickly and efficiently. So thank everyone for attending, and we thank you for your interest.